Now, one of the big problems in this Gemara is how can we compare Abaye, who permits the sukkah in our case, to the story over there where there's no walls at all? And say, oh, Abaye will say you're allowed to use that as an, as a on Shabbos you can carry in it. There's no walls. Well, here also he holds you can have, you don't have any official walls. Here also, why not? Because all of the walls are basically too far from the kosher schach, and we're using imaginary walls. So we're using imaginary walls on Sukkah. So he can use the same thing for Shabbos. He has a case where you have this bika, this valley that has this ceiling with just some poles that holds it up, 4 poles on the, and that's basically kosher. The problem that I'm mentioning is, but Abaye has a problem if it's mefulish. If it's open on 2 sides, it's a problem. So for sure, it should be a problem, at least with regard to Shabbos. In that case of Shabbos, for sure it's going to be a problem. It's open on all 4 sides, in the bika, in the valley, in the field. It's open on all 4 sides. By the Sukkah case, the case that he talks about is not such a big problem. In Abaye's case, Abaye talks about a case where there's a portico, which you have an apartment building all around. So the apartment building, so in that case, you don't have walls. True, he's making all the walls of his sukkah, but there's an apartment building that blocks people from walking. The people are not using this as a thoroughfare. It's being blocked. It's blocking them from walking from one end of the courtyard to the other because you got the apartment building that blocks them. So there, we could understand Abaye's view. But what are you going to say in the bika? How can you compare Abaye's view here to the case in the valley where there's nothing around, and all you got is your portico, whatever you call this structure, and there's no walls at all. So of course it should be a problem. You don't have any walls. It should be considered a mavli mafulish, this thoroughfare. How could Abaye permit it? Abaye seems to agree with Rava. And the truth is, even Rava is a problem. Because Rava says here it works. It doesn't, I'm sorry, by Sukkah it doesn't work. And he has a problem because you don't have any solid walls. But he's the one who asks Abaye a question. And he's implying, like in that scenario, it shouldn't work either. And then what are we going to say? In other words, let's keep it with Abaye. Let's just say Abaye doesn't seem to flow. Abaye doesn't seem to flow because Abaye's case where he permits the sukkah, it would work in a place where people can't walk through. But if people can walk through, seems like he also doesn't say pitikra. So this is a topic of discussion. One of the reasons why Tosfos doesn't want to learn the way Rashi learns here is because of this question. This is a strong question on how do you explain Abaye this way. If you're learning the case this way, it just doesn't seem to flow. Abaye prohibits it if it's a thoroughfare, but then if it's totally open, he permits it. If it's a thoroughfare, you got 2 walls on 2 sides. He prohibits it. You can't say particular. You can't say that the third wall. It's a thoroughfare. But you have no walls. All of a sudden, this in the bika, now he's going to permit having no walls. That seems to be problematic. And so Tosfos wants to learn a different pshat, and I don't know if I want to get into it. This is complicated stuff. Maybe if we understand it very well today, maybe I will touch on Tosfos tomorrow. But let's stick with Rashi now. I'm going to try to finish tomorrow.
Can we fix it up by treating it like a mavoi and put a board on one side, or maybe one pole, maybe on a corner of the walkway that has is too far from the walls. So if we do that like you do with a
Are you trying to answer the question on Abaye? So to answer the problem on Abaye, we're going to have to figure out why, when it has two walls, it's a problem, and if it has no walls, it's not a problem. So how do you answer that? How can we answer that if it's if two walls is better than no walls, and the two walls is more of a thoroughfare. No walls is okay. How do you answer that? So there are a few ways the commentaries want to say. Number one is that it's not that it's a thoroughfare; it's similar to a thoroughfare. So if no walls, it doesn't look like a thoroughfare. If it's two walls and it looks similar to a thoroughfare, that's where he says we're not going to say pitikra yard v'seisim. That's one explanation. Another explanation is that when it's in a courtyard, what do they do in the courtyard? It's all about walking through. So there, it's going to be much more of a problem. If it's in a courtyard, that's where you have a problem of a thoroughfare, because that's what the courtyard is, that people will walk through. However, when it comes to the laws of, when it comes to the case of Shabbos, where it's just in a field, that's not called a thoroughfare. That's not a courtyard. That's not what people are not going to be walking through. So there, maybe you could say that Abaye will allow you to have pitikra on all the walls. But here, where it's in a courtyard, then you have a problem if it looks like, if it's a thoroughfare, if it's in a courtyard where people walk through, that would be a problem, because it's in an area where people are meant to be walking through. So that's how they answer the question on Rashi. Tosfos doesn't accept that. Tosfos has his own shot here, but the way this is the way we're going to understand Rashi, that we've got Abaye who's lenient, but even though he's lenient, he seems to have a problem if it's a thoroughfare type of situation. But he's lenient, and you can have a pitikra even on all the walls, on Sukkah and on Shabbos, and it should be fine. And we've got Rava who doesn't allow it, and seemingly on Shabbos he also won't allow it. And that's where the Gemara is asking. It seems like the argument goes hand in hand. We've got the compatible argument with regard to Shabbos and regard to Sukkah. And so that's where we're holding here. The Itmar, I'm going to start over there in the word the Itmar, which is on page 18b, and it's 5 lines up from the bottom of the page. What did you say, Jeffrey?
I found it.
Okay. Yeah. So it's 5 lines up from the bottom of the page on 18b. The Itmar, because it was stated, it was said in the Beis Medrash that Achsadra Babika, when you have in this valley or this field, you have this Achsadra that Rashi is learning, it has no walls, and you have a ceiling, and this is for Hilchas Shabbos. We're going to say that the ceiling maybe could be considered like a wall because of the law of Pi Tikra. The edge of the ceiling of the roof can go down and be considered like a wall, and this is not something that you can understand. It's a halacha l'Moshe miSinai. It's a law given to Moshe at Sinai that this is considered a wall according to Jewish law. So we have a statement about this achsadra and bika. Rav says, mutter lataltel bakula, you're allowed to carry in this area of that's under the achsad, that's within this achsadra area. You're allowed to carry in it completely, bakula, in the whole area. The amrinan, because we say Pi Tikra, the edge of the ceiling is yored v'seisim, it goes down and closes off, and it makes a wall. Shmuel Amar ein metaltalin ba, and Shmuel says you cannot carry in this area. Why not? So it says you cannot carry in this area elab dalad amos, only within 4 cubits, which is you're allowed to carry in the 4 cubit area more than 4. Once you reach 4 cubits or more, then it's a problem, and because you're going beyond your domain. For a person's domain is 4 cubits, and once he takes it out, it's very similar to going to another domain. So that's the measurement of 4 cubits that is mentioned in the laws of Shabbos. It's just like in the public domain, you're not allowed to carry something from a private domain to a public domain, or from vice versa. And in public domain itself, you're not allowed to carry from 4 cubits. Why aren't you allowed to carry out of your 4 cubits? In other words, right, you can't step over, you can't do more than 4 cubits. Why can't you carry more than 4 cubits? Because you're basically going out of your domain. A person dwells in his 4 cubits.
Yeah.
And when you go out of that 4 cubits, it's considered like going out of your domain. So here also, within this achsadra, Shmuel says that's not considered an eruv. Your wall, your ceiling, that's not considered a private domain, but you're allowed to carry up to 4. Once you can't carry more than 4 amos, more than 4 cubits. You can't carry. Why? Because deloy amrinon pitikra yer v'seisem. We do not say the edge of the ceiling comes down. Now Rashi adds over here that if you would have one solid wall, he would allow the rule of P tikra for the other walls. The problem is you have 0 solid. If you would have one solid wall, Rashi says, then it would actually work. You would be able to have an eruv here and carry in the whole area. Yes.
So didn't we have a consideration that something is a makom chashuv?
It seems like there's a few dimensions. There's the 3 by 3, there's the 4 by 4 hand breadths, and now there's 4 cubits. And it seems like there's person dwells in 4 cubits, but a makom chashuv could be 4 hand breadths. And then we found that the concept of 3, because there's a law of lavud, it also has some significance as well. The 3 hand breadths. Yeah, so there are these numbers do have significance.
Yeah, but it seems like it's very easy to correct this. We also had the case where they pulled a tarp over the posts. You could pull a tarp on one side of the overhang. Why aren't we considering how we can correct it rather than worrying about it just being by itself?
Well, you don't have to correct something that's not broken.
Okay.
So that would be a reason not to do it. Of course, people are lazy. How to correct it? I mean, you might, in the olden days also, you have to understand they didn't have Home Depots on every other corner.
Yeah, you're correct.
They didn't have cars. So it wasn't easy always to make a wall. Nowadays, you go to Home Depot, you get yourself one piece of lattice, you got a wall already.
But it's very hard to imagine.
4 pieces of lattice, you got a whole sukkah.
It's very hard to imagine this as if it's in a field. We can see the ledge coming out of a building and being there.
No, there's no ledges here. No ledge.
Right. So then this is like
just
the
sukkah on 4 poles with a roof.
Right. So it's like the sukkah on top of the house. And we couldn't do it in the middle because it had no walls. It looks like the same problem. But if you moved the sukkah, which had 4 poles and just a cover, the correct kosher schach, if you moved it to the corner, then we said that the walls could come up.
If you
because there were walls under the house.
But we don't have any house here. This is a field.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
So now the question is, if you need a wall, we saw somebody was drying his clothes on the top of the sukkah, for example, or that you have the lattice that's on bottom. If you had on one side, if you made a lattice or you piled stones on one side, then you very easily could make a wall, and then maybe a partial wall, and you could say lavud.
There are options. You're right. There definitely are options. It might not be the easiest, especially if you're an older person, can't dig and carry these things. But there are options, to make sukkahs in an easy way, especially nowadays. But anyway, the bottom line is that part of learning is libun hilchasa.
Okay.
Libun hilchasa means to clarify law, which means that instead of just saying, "Oh, I could just be machmir," maybe this is a shaila. I'll build a new sukkah. Oh, I have a question in my kitchen. I'll just throw it out and I'll just buy a new knife. I'll throw out my oven. I'll just get a new oven. I just call Home Depot. Let them Best Buy will bring me a new oven. I have a shaila. Okay, I'll just what I mean. There's an easy way of doing things than be machmir. I have a lot of money. I can just do whatever I want. I'll just be machmir. But in learning, it doesn't apply. It doesn't work that way. In learning, part of learning that the Eibishter gives us the Torah is he wants us to figure out libun hilchasa. What is the actual halacha here? Instead of jumping, it's almost like when you ask a Rav a shaila. So instead of him answering you, imagine if he would tell you, "Oh, you don't know if it's kosher? Just throw it out and then forget about it."
Okay, I agree with you. I understand. But
that's wrong. That's not a way a Rav should answer. A Rav's supposed to answer and say, "Let me think about it. Is this a kosher? Does it need to be kosher?" And use his head and make the libun clarify law. So that's more or less what the Gemara is doing. And even though even if there was an easy way out, but you want to know what the halacha really is.
But we've had cases that are similar to this. So that's why I want to use the reasoning from before. We had Rav Kash, right? Some shepherds in the field set up a place to rest, right? And it didn't have any walls.
What do you mean they didn't have walls? Sukkah's Rakbash?
Yeah.
Sure they had walls.
I didn't remember that it had walls. All I remember is that it has a kosher schach.
No. It has to have walls. Of course, we know that a sukkah needs to have 2.5 walls.
Okay, so all those were considered to be kosher only because they did have more structure to it than just the cover. I was imagining it differently.
Yeah. No, we're not relying on Pitikra. Here we got this new law that we're just coming up with now on page 18, that there's a concept of Pitikra that you could you don't even need a wall at all. And
at the well, we had a special formula also, right? With the well that you could draw
with the well. Okay, that was an interesting thing. Right. That was regarding because it's kosher for Shabbos, it's going to be kosher for Sukkah, and it's that was an interesting case that they permitted they considered it a wall regarding Shabbos. Yeah, that was a unique case. But you're right. Yeah, that's a good example.
Right,
Pasei birois is called pasei birois.
But they did have 4 posts, and they said if you do it a certain way, then you can figure the width of the post goes in 2 directions.
Right? Yeah. That's good memory over there. Yeah, that was a good point.
So maybe this looks like that.
Right. Well, the thing is, so we're going to try to figure out how it could be, if it's kosher or if it's not. So we have Rav and Shmuel. Rav says it's permissible. Shmuel says it's not permissible. And so the Gemara is thinking that the argument that we have about Rav and Abaye is very similar to Rav and Shmuel.
Right.
Except that you have to know who goes with who. Rav goes, Rav here.
With Abaye.
It goes with Abaye because Rav says you're allowed to carry in this on Shabbos. That goes with Abaye that says that you're allowed to carry on this, that you're allowed to use the sukkah. The sukkah is kosher. And Shmuel would go with Rav. The Shmuel here that says that you're not allowed to carry in this would seemingly fit with Rava over there, that you're not allowed to that the sukkah is not a kosher sukkah. So the Gemara says that that's not so. Rava is going to want to say everyone agrees with me that even if this works for Shabbos, Rava wants to say, but you know what? When it comes to Sukkah, my opinion is according to everyone. It's the accepted view according to everyone. Shabbos is an argument. But when it comes to Sukkah, everyone's going to agree with me. Even the opinion that sounds like they don't agree will also agree. So here the Gemara says it in the following wording. The Gemara says, "Aliba de Shmuel kulayalma like pligi." According to Shmuel, now the way Shmuel says his halacha, everyone agrees that it can only work with one opinion. That Shmuel, who says here that regarding Shabbos, where Shmuel says you're not allowed to carry, he can only fit with Rava. Rava, in other words, according to Shmuel, everyone agrees that he only fits with Rava. Abaye can't claim, oh, Shmuel can agree with me. No, he can't claim that. Why not? Because Shmuel says that even in the case of the Achsadra, where the roof is meant to enclose this area, that's what the purpose of the roof was for, is to enclose this area. So that even there, he says, we don't say that that's considered a wall. For sure, in the case of Shmuel, in the case of Abaye, where we're talking about a sukkah that has ledges, and the ledge is meant to enclose the portico part, not to enclose the courtyard part. See, the ledge covers over a portico, and outside of the portico is the courtyard. Now, what is the purpose of the ledge? The purpose of the ledge is really for the portico part, not for the outside it in the courtyard part. And so if Abaye says, I don't care what the purpose of the ledge is for, I'm going to use that wall that the ledge causes there to be, and I'm going to consider that wall a wall for the courtyard for the sukkah. But what was the purpose of that wall in the first place? That imaginary wall is meant, it's coming from the ledge, which is meant for the portico part, not for the courtyard part. So again, just imagine you've got the apartment building that has a lot of one floor apartments, and you've got a ledge going across all of these apartment doors, all of these doors, and you got a ledge there, and then you have schach going beyond. What is the purpose of the ledge? The ledge is to give a little privacy to the area, to the porch in front of the doorway. That's what the purpose of the ledge is. Now Abaye says, you know what? I'm even going to permit you to use that edge of the ledge to be considered a wall, not for the porch part, but for the courtyard part. That's not what it was built for. So what the Gemara here says is, if Shmuel is of the opinion that you cannot use in the Bika, in the valley, when you have this type of a structure with a ceiling, which is meant for it itself, and even there, Shmuel says you can't use it. For sure, he's not going to allow you to use it in the case of Sukkah, where the wall is not even meant for it. The wall is meant for the other side. So for sure, Abaye can't claim to have Shmuel on his side. Shmuel talks again. What we're learning here, let me just clarify one more time to make it very clear. There's a special law that we're learning, Pitikra Yerd V'Soisim. And what the Gemara is now doing is differentiating and saying there's two types. There's two types where your wall is coming down. We're imagining a wall. There's some imaginary wall. Just imagine you have a ledge in front of your house and you have an imaginary wall coming down. That wall, the Gemara is saying, when you have a ledge in front of your house, your apartment, the edge of the wall comes down and makes a wall, according to Jewish law. Is that wall meant for your privacy, or is it meant for the people in the street? What's the purpose of the ledge? Is it giving some type of a shade to the people in the street, or is it giving some type of privacy to you? The purpose of the ledge is privacy to you. That's what a purpose of a ledge is. And the Gemara here is telling us, well, then that is not as easy to say that we make a wall and we're going to use that wall for a sukkah that goes to the street. That we can't necessarily do that. That's taking it a step far. That Abaye says you could do that, but that's like taking a very extreme view. There's a lot of room to say that we'll consider this a wall, but it's a wall for you because that's what the ledge was built for. The ledge was built for you to be a wall. We want an imaginary wall. That wall is good for what the ledge is meant for. That's for you. And to go and say that we're going to use that wall and have it considered a sukkah for the people in the outside of your ledge, that is taking it a new step. That's taking it further. Now, Abaye goes for that. Shmuel is of the opinion that even in a case where you have this, so to speak, ledge that's meant for you, even there, we won't even consider it a pitikra. Even there, he's not going to consider it a pitikra. Even if you want to consider that area private, in your private area, not the outside of that area. Even if you want to use the ceiling for the area that it was meant for, even there, Shmuel says you can't do it. It's not a good Eruv for Shabbos. You can't use that Eruv for Shabbos. You have this in a field. You have a roof. That roof is meant for that area. And Shmuel says even there, where it's meant for that area, I don't say pitikra. I don't say that you can make imaginary walls. How much more so in the case of Abaye, where you want to use the wall for the outside area, for sure in that case, you for sure are not going to say pitikra. So Shmuel, there's no way that Shmuel can hold like Abaye. Everyone agrees that Shmuel will only fit with Rava's logic. So that's the first part of this. Now comes the next page. Ki pligi, where can they argue? They can argue aliba de Rav with regard to the opinion of Rav. We're now on page 19a, and we're mentioning that according to Rav, Rav is of the opinion that regarding Shabbos, you have this field, and you have some type of frame in the field with a ceiling, and the edge of the ceiling is going to be considered like walls. And Rav says that's good. Now, in that case, Abaye, of course, is going to say, oh, Rav holds like me, that we say pitikra, we say this rule. And Rava said in the laws of Sukkah that you don't say it. So Rava is going to have to somehow differentiate and say, no, Rav says his law in that case, but in the case of Sukkah, he's even going to agree with me. That's what Rava is going to try to say. In other words, how is he going to make a distinction between the case that Rav says is permissible and the case of Sukkah where Rava says is not permissible, and Rava's going to want to say, Rav agrees with me that it's not permissible. What do you mean? Rav says it's kosher regarding the laws of Shabbos. So Rava's going to have to come up with some distinction between the two cases. So here the Gemara says and explains it. He pligi aliba de Rav. When do they argue? They argue according to Rav. Abaye karav. Abaye, of course, fits very good with Rav because both of them permit this pitikra rule. And even when there's no walls, if they permit it, no problem. But Rava Amar Lach, Rava will tell you that there's a difference. Ad kan lo yomar Rav. Until here, Rav didn't say his law only over there, Hassam, where he permitted it on Shabbos, Ela de Mechitzos le'achsadra hu Davidi. Because those walls that you're imagining are the intent when it was built was for the achsadra, for the portico. That's what it was made for. That's why over there, Rav will say that you can use those walls and carry in that area. It's fine to carry. You can carry in that area because the ceiling was meant to protect that portico area, and we're making walls for that portico area in the in the field. However, aval hacha, but here in the case of Sukkah, where the walls of the ledge are meant for the portico and not for outside of the portico, for the Sukkah that's outside the portico, that it's not meant for. The aval hacha, the lav lahachi avidi, they're not meant for this. They weren't built for this. Loi, we will not say pitikra yerid b'soisim, that the edge of the ceiling will go down and make a wall, and therefore the argument of Rav and Shmuel is not exactly the same as Abaye and Rava. It looks like Isaac is sharing something. Isaac, I'm sharing this doc. Okay. Isaac, did you want to share something? Looks like he got kicked off. Okay. Does everyone follow this the way the flow of this Gemara? Did anyone follow? Did anyone follow the flow of this Gemara? basically, the Gemara had an argument with regard to Sukkah, a case, a certain scenario in Sukkah. Can we say that the wall is an imaginary wall? And the Gemara compared it to a case of Shabbos, imaginary wall, an argument there, an argument here. We thought they're the same argument. It comes out that it's not exactly the same argument. That's basically what the Gemara says. And it could be that the opinions in Shabbos, at least one of them could fit with both when it comes to Sukkah. Both of them could prohibit the Sukkah case. It could be, or it could be that one fits with the, one will follow one opinion, one will follow the other opinion, but it's definitely not exactly the same case. There are differences between the cases, and therefore there's room to say that even the opinion on Shabbos that permits it will not permit it in the case of Sukkah, because in the case of Sukkah, the portico imaginary wall is meant to use for a wall outside of the portico and not meant for the wall inside. Now, if David, if you're with us, if you have a picture, not a picture of the later Gemara, a picture in the earlier Gemara where it just shows the crest-shaped apartment building with the ledge and the schach on top. If you have a picture of that, I think it will benefit us. I would just, David, are you with us? David has an online picture of Gemara, so that would help. But I guess David's not there. Okay, so I'm going to continue a little, and the next Gemara is very similar to a previous Gemara we had, where the Gemara had mentioned that in Neherdah they learned one way, and in Surah they learned another way. And our Gemara, there's one little piece before that actually. There's one little piece that I have to that we're up to. Okay, let me do this other piece. Then it's very similar to the previous Gemara. So Tanan. So the Gemara says that there's really a big problem with our whole discussion, because the Mishnah really, the Mishnah seems to prove one way. Like you could bring a proof from our Mishnah that we do not say Pitikra Yer decisive. It would seem like you have a clear proof in the Mishnah. The really strong question, because if you look back in the Mishnah on page 17a, the Mishnah on page 17a says that when you have a 4 cubits, a chotzer mekefes achsadra, when you have a chotzer, a courtyard that's surrounded by these porticos, so in that case, if it has 4 cubits of the ledge, it's not going to be a kosher sukkah in the middle. So you want to use this. It's really the same case as the case that Abaye and Rava were talking about. They have the portico in front of this ches-size building, and the Mishnah basically says that you can't have a kosher sukkah there. The reason of the Mishnah was because you don't have doif and akuma, you don't have the bent wall. Why do you have a bent wall there? Because there, the bent wall is limited to 4 cubits. So that was the reason of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said it's not kosher. But guess what? If you have pitikra, then it should be kosher. Why can't you? What about the law of pitikra? So the Mishnah seems to be a very strong proof against Abaye. Look back in the Mishnah. Look back on page 17a, everyone. Turn back to 17a, the top of the page, 17a. In the 4th line of the Gemara, it says, V'chein chotzer shehi mukefes achsad. You have a courtyard that is surrounded by porticos. So you've got the ledge that goes all around these 3 wings of the apartment building, and this ledge goes all around it, and you're going to put schach on top of the ledge from the north side to the south side, and you got bamboo sticks. You're sticking from one end to the other, and you've got a sukkah there. And what are you going to use as a walls? The walls is going to be the walls of the apartment building. And what's holding up the schach? The ledge. So the Mishnah says that im yesh tachtav arba amais psula. If it has 4 cubits or more, it's too much. You can't say doif and akuma. It's going to be invalid. It's an invalid sukkah. So the question is, it's invalid because it's 4 cubits, so you can't say doif and akuma? Okay, but it should be kosher because of pitikra. Let the edge of the ledge be considered like a wall, imaginary wall. You've got the ledge there. So it could be more than 4 cubits. Let it be 5 cubits or 10 cubits. You've got an edge that's considered a wall, and now we've got a sukkah with perfect walls. They're imaginary, but they're halachic walls. So what's wrong? So this is a proof against Abaye, very strong proof. So let's look inside the Gemara. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Back to page 19a on line 4. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. And similarly, you have a chotzer, a courtyard that's surrounded by an achsadra, by these porticos. And so the law is that if it's 4 cubits, it's invalid for a sukkah. And the Gemara asks, why should it be invalid? Name a pitikra, you're advisaisim. Let's say this new law that we learned, that the edge of the wall is considered like the edge of the ceiling is considered like a wall. And it doesn't matter how big the ledge is. Let it be 10 feet, 10 cubits, who cares? The edge of it is considered a wall. And now you have a wall for your sukkah. The Gemara answers, Tirgama Rava Aliba da Abaye. Rava answers for Abaye. So you have a big debate, and Rava is almost winning. And he says, no, this is not fair. Because this case, I have an answer for Abaye over here. So Rava comes and answers for Abaye. Even though if he was quiet, he might have proved his point. But he wanted to, of course, was looking for the emes. So he says, this is not a proof against Abaye, because you could answer a good answer. You know how you answer it? Kishehishva es kiruyay. When he evened out the ceiling. What does that mean? It means that when you even out the ceiling, means that you make the schach flush with the ceiling. So it's not that it's on top of the ledges. It's in from one ledge to the other ledge, in the ledge itself, in that space of the ledge. That's where the schach is going. How exactly you do that, you put it that way. I would guess that you have some type of holder that holding up the bamboo boards within the ledge. So you got bamboo boards in the ledge itself. That in other words, on the bottom of the ledge, there's a wooden contraption that holds the bamboo boards, and so the ledge itself, so you don't see the edge of the ledge. Why don't you see the edge of the ledge? Because the bamboo boards are going from the edge, from one edge of the ledge on the north side to the edge of the ledge on the south side, and therefore they're not on top of the ledge, they're in the ledge. They're from within the ledge to the other ledge, and they're basically blocking the view of the edge of the ledge. Now, when you don't have the view of the edge of the ledge, then you cannot say pitikra yerd v'soisim. We don't consider that imaginary wall because it doesn't stop. It has to stop in order to make there to be a imaginary wall. If there's no stop, then there's no imaginary wall. So the understanding in the Mishnah was that you didn't have an option to use pitikra. If it would have been less than 4 cubits, we could have used the rule of Daifen Akuma, the bent wall. But 4 cubits or more, you can't use that law anymore. So what are you stuck with? We're stuck with you don't have Daifen Akuma. So you want to use pitikra, you can't use that either because there's no edge. A pitikra means there has to be an edge that you can see. It has to be visible. In order for there to be a halachic wall that is imaginary, it has to be visible, and it's not visible. And that's how the conclusion of this little piece of Gemara is. And then the Gemara, after this, mentions that in Surah, they learned it a little differently. And they felt that the argument of Abaye and Rava is slightly on the other case. It's on a different case, not on this case. But